has joined on Zoom. So hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for Samir to especially join us as well. Let me just give you a brief introduction of what Startup Grind is and what we're going to do today before we start off with the formal fireside chat. So Startup Grind is the world's largest network community. We host events around the globe in 600 cities for startups, entrepreneurs, founders, and people who are trying to do something different. This series is supported by a bunch of amazing partners from inside and outside Pakistan. Again, we're active in more than 125 countries from the past 10 years, and I represent the network in Pakistan, Islamabad. And over the past 3 years in Islamabad, we've hosted more than 110 digital leaders from not just amazing entrepreneurs, but investors, people who are doing things differently, people from the government who are trying to build a digital Pakistan, and amazing friends from inside and outside Pakistan. One of our highlights in Pakistan has been the Startup Grind Pakistan conference, which we did in last November. And Zeeshan was very kind, Zeeshan and Samir, to join us all the way from Toronto. Just to give you a brief introduction of a company called Salesforce. So if you're not aware of what Salesforce is, it was started in 1999 by an Oracle executive named Mark Benioff and his three co-founders. Salesforce is or was one of the first global companies to successfully deploy a cloud-based CRM. They're considered the inventors of the software as a SaaS model. Today, Salesforce has an annual revenue of, I think last year around 16, $17 billion, and it is considered, I think, the fifth largest software company in the world. Our amazing rockstar speaker for today, live with us all the way from Toronto, is Zeeshan, my dear friend. I consider him somewhat of an inspiration for myself, but also for a lot of other Pakistanis who are trying to do something different and trying to build themselves, especially in the field of IT, right? And we're lucky as a country to have so many amazing members of our community who've gone out, who've done well for themselves, who've made this amazing journey and now working in these leading organizations around the globe. And this Fireside is part of that series to kind of share their life story and get inspired. So Zeeshan is the vice president for Salesforce in Canada for the digital transformation technology since March 2015. So he spent 11 years at Salesforce. Before that, he was at BA Systems for around 3 years, and before that he was at Oracle for more than 6 years. And at Salesforce, his responsibilities include a focus on financial services, telecommunication, and retail verticals. With this, I'd like to welcome Zeeshan. Thank you so much for taking out the time.
You're more than welcome, Rajesh. Thank you very much. And I'd like to begin by thanking a couple of people who introduced me to you actually a long time ago.
Absolutely.
My good friend Shah Jahan Chaudhary from NIC Karachi, and Mr. Samir Dosal, who's the president of the Canada-Pakistan Business Council. Both of them brokered the introduction, and I attended Startup Grind Islamabad with you last year. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining in with this. I should give a shout out to Shah Jahan, his contribution with the Startup Grind Pakistan conference. It wouldn't have been such a big deal without his support and kind of co-hosting the whole thing. So I'm sure he's listening to us on Facebook or somewhere. So thank you. With this, we can't avoid the elephant in the room. So obviously everyone is sitting at home. You're also, I think, live from home as well. So how is this new situation treating you? That would be my first question. And your work, like how is it working differently for you with this new environment?
Well, first of all, we have all been at home for the last 5 weeks. I don't recall any period in my lifetime where I've been confined to my home for the last 5 weeks. And You see there's a little cut here. I had a beard going and I shaved it for you to look presentable and
Thank
managed to
you.
cut myself. So life is definitely different. I think it's gonna change for a long time to come. It's not a short-term phenomena. I think there will be a transition towards going more digital in various aspects of our life. There are some things I think which we'll see a huge drop in. Like, for example, every meeting started off with a handshake. I think people will think twice before shaking hands now, or hugs and kisses and things like that. So I think it'll impact us for the next few years, not just the next few months.
Yeah, and I hope hugs and kisses don't end. So that but thank you so much for sharing this. So you've been in Canada for how long now? 30.
I've been in Canada since 1998 or
Yeah.
99.
So that's I think
I
two
used,
years after I was born in '96.
yes.
And you
I used to be with Oracle in Pakistan. I noticed a few of the folks tuning in are from Pakistan. So I worked with Oracle in Pakistan, and
well,
I moved here. I don't know how much you want me to bore you with my story, but when I moved to Canada, like the most new immigrants, I couldn't find a job here. And I applied at Oracle 6 times. I was not hired for the first 5 times.
well,
And I started my first job in Canada cleaning shelves at Best Buy.
well,
And the sixth time I applied at Oracle, I got hired, but at a much lower level than I was.
makes sense. And so just to go backwards a little bit more than this, let's start off with your childhood. So you were born in Pakistan, and
I was born in Karachi, Pakistan, which is where I was raised. I got most of my schooling. I lived in a very impoverished neighborhood. I don't know Ajkal how that neighborhood is, but it was close to the airport called Shah Faisal Colony.
okay,
And I was born below the poverty line. And as you understand, poverty line is very different in Pakistan than it is in the West.
absolutely,
And I have no business being where I am had it not been for some great sacrifices made by my parents, especially my mom, and made sure all three of us, I'm the youngest of three brothers, went to a really good school. Far away from our home, it was St. Patrick's School. That's where I went in grade one. That's where I did my O levels and A levels from in 86, 88.
well, no, that's amazing. I think with my journey as well, and you've obviously met my parents in Islamabad. So I think
Yes, I have.
behind every amazing leader, there's even more awesome parents. So kudos to their work. And so you completed your early education in Karachi, and then what about your university and all of that? Like, how did the early years look for you in Pakistan after this education?
Well, not only did my early education in Karachi, I did all my education in Karachi.
Oh, wow.
I graduated from St. Pat's College, school, and then college, and then I went to NED University. And if there are younger folks like you listening, this will be a great story, because most of the time people think by the time you're in your mid 20s or early 20s, you should have your life figured out. You should know what you want to do. My story and journey has been totally different. I joined NAD because my father was an engineer. He insisted one of his sons should become an engineer, hated it, dropped out. I then started doing my bachelor's in statistics and maths because one of my brothers was really good at both, and he thought that's a great skill set to have. I hated that, dropped out, went to IBA to do my MBA, bachelor's, and during that time, my father passed away, so we couldn't afford it. So I dropped out of there and started selling encyclopedias in Pakistan. So if you remember the days of encyclopedia, you wouldn't, Harjesh, this is before your time. There used to be these sets of books called encyclopedias, Britannica and Collier's, and I sold them door to door for a long time. My mom, if you remember Juma Bazaars, had a stall in Juma Bazaar, and she sold towels to make sure that we put food on the table. And so I transitioned my education 3, 4 times, and then after a break of 8 years, finished my MBA from what is now called Greenwich. And so all of my education has been in Pakistan.
Well, that's amazing. And you've started and dropped out of a bunch of things. So you're obviously, all about kind of finding your fit, right? And then your journey about selling encyclopedias. So I'm aware of the like what encyclopedia is, but I think this shows that from the very early age, and even in times of kind of like this difficult time, you were still entrepreneurial and trying something.
That is correct. Not because of my choice, because of choices made by life for me. But
Right.
yes, you're correct.
But then you completed after the gap of 8 years your bachelor's degree. Is that correct?
My master's degree, yes.
Okay, your master's degree. And how did you get from there to Canada, and then how did you get from there to like working for Oracle and in like the tech industry?
Well, I continued to be entrepreneurial. The company that I worked for selling encyclopedias went bankrupt. And in my early 20s, I borrowed $5,000 from somebody and bought that company. And we still run that company in Pakistan. It sells various other educational products. I repaid the $5,000 to that gentleman and made him a 50% partner 20 years ago. That was one of the best decisions of my life. So after that, I went into the job market, and I was interviewed by Oracle Pakistan many, many years ago. And I think they should have thrown me out in the first interview, because I remember they're asking me, what do you know about Oracle? And I said, besides how to spell it, nothing.
Wow.
And fortunately, they didn't throw me out. I started in their sales organization. And when I came to Canada, I continued in sales. And as I said, there was a brief 4 or 5 month time when nobody in Canada would hire me because I had no Canadian experience. So I cleaned shelf at Best Buy, and I was the most qualified shelf cleaner at Best Buy.
Wow, amazing. I think that's an achievement in itself, that whatever you've done, you've tried to excel at it. And I think the encyclopedia company, I think that's actually new for me as well. I didn't know this before.
Now, I had the good fortune of dabbling with my entrepreneurial spirit, and created 2, 3 companies. The one I would love to talk about, if you give me the leeway, is about 2 years ago, I founded a nonprofit. It's called the Rainbow Cloud Initiative, and it works with new immigrants and refugees to Canada. And we work with other large nonprofits who help these new immigrants and refugees. But we focus on cloud computing technologies. So I convinced my leadership at Salesforce to allow me to do free trainings for various Salesforce certifications. We are in conversation with other large providers like AWS and Google. And so the idea is to take these new immigrants and refugees who come to Canada and have technology backgrounds. We transition their technology backgrounds to other cloud computing technologies, and then we work with the ecosystem and help find them jobs. And that is something I'm really, really enjoying doing. And in the foreseeable future, when I retire from software sales and leading sales organizations, that's where I expect to spend a lot of my time.
That's fantastic. So it's Azan on my side, but I'll just leave you with one more question. So that's really amazing that you started, with all these companies, you've started something to give back and do for others as well, right? I was just watching this interview with Mark Benioff, who's, this founder of obviously Salesforce. And one of the common things that I find is that, Salesforce has this very philanthropic culture, right? So Salesforce dedicates like 1% of their time and resources and employees and everything to philanthropy. Right? So, like, why did you? What was kind of your motivation behind starting this, and like, where do you see this going and playing out a role in your life? Why do you think it's important to give back?
Oh, that's a good question. Thank you. So first of all, I'd like to say that I draw a lot of my inspiration from both the co-founders who I've got to know well, Mark Benioff and Parker Harris, especially Parker. Parker's wife is from Canada, so he comes here more often, and I've got more opportunity to spend time with him. Salesforce, when they started, instituted a 1-1-1 model, as you just quoted. The 1% of employee time, 1% of product, and 1% of profit would be put into nonprofit usage. So Salesforce encourages every employee to do that. In fact, we get about 6 days off, paid time off. This is besides our vacation, where we can volunteer our time for causes that interest us. And Salesforce actually encourages us to do that. That is one of the reasons I like working with Salesforce for as long as I have. This is the longest time I've ever worked with any company. And so I drew the inspiration from our leaders at Salesforce, both Parker Harris and Mark Benioff. But uh, the reality is the reason I got into this nonprofit is also driven from my own personal experience. As I mentioned to you earlier, I was born and raised below the poverty line in Shah Faisal Colony in Karachi, which if you have folks from Karachi listening in, at 30 years ago or 20 years ago, it was not one of the desired locations to live in. B, when I moved here to Canada, I draw from my personal experience as a new immigrant. Is difficult because you don't have a network, you don't know people, and the people you know want to stay away from you because they think, okay, this person's going to become a burden on us, or we'll have to help them out. So they don't have resources to latch onto. While in Canada, we are fortunate that the safety net is really strong, and there are lots of organizations that help you in terms of interviews, rewriting resumes, and things like those. I found that there were not a lot of organizations that took people who had technical experiences from wherever they're coming from, India, Pakistan, China, Brazil, Iran. And it's easy in the cloud technologies to run a 5-day or a 6-day program and teach them a new technology. And especially because there's such a huge deficit in these jobs and roles in the North American market, it's easy to find jobs for them.
Yeah.
So we go to our own ecosystem of Salesforce customers and ask them, what are the roles you're looking to fill? And we try and focus trainings based on those roles and then help place those folks. So the driving is that, whichever faith you come from tells you to pay it forward and do good. Life has been extremely kind to myself, and my family, and we are doing better than any one of us imagined. So there has to be more to life than just making money. And that's what the next chapter of my life, the next 10, 15 years is going to be about.
Wow, oh, that's truly inspirational, and again something new for me that I've learned in this. So you went to Canada, you applied like 6 times to Oracle, got into Oracle, and then how did that transition from your career and your work, which you're now doing at Salesforce, like what was the evolution of your like career after joining Oracle in Canada?
So I joined Oracle in a very junior role, which is called, it was an inside sales role where you had to be sitting on your desk, you had to make 50 calls a day, and somebody would come and monitor not the quality of the calls or the conversations you had, but they had to make sure you made at least 60 calls a day.
Wow.
And so it was a very junior role, but you had to pay your bills. I had to pay my rent. Took the job, and fortunately, with a lot of luck, did well. The one thing I would stress, and I don't know how much of your audience is international versus local in Pakistan, but the one thing I have to stress upon, which I think my entire career hinges upon, is building out your network. And a lot of times when I coach and mentor folks, at least in Canada, who are from India, Pakistan, and the South Asia, they misinterpret network. They think LinkedIn and Facebook networks are the same. So I often ask them to show me their Facebook network, and I ask them to show them the LinkedIn network. They're identical. And then I kind of pivot to my Facebook network, which is obviously very Desi heavy, and I have a lot of Desi friends who are in my personal network. But when I turn on my professional network, it's my LinkedIn network. Majority of people would be who can potentially be a hiring manager or can talk about your professional career. And so if there's anybody listening who's building out their career in North America or back home in Pakistan, the one thing I would say is network, network, network. And network is not about collecting hundreds or thousands of contacts. It's about how well they know you. And so keep those networks alive, nurture those networks, spend time with them. And my entire career has been revolved around my ability to build and maintain my network.
Wow, that's amazing. That kind of validates the work that we are trying to do. So you talked about building your network. What would you say is like the key thing when you want to build like meaningful relationships with people? You said people should know you rather than just adding hundreds and hundreds of people. So how do you build meaningful relationships that can help you in the future, or you can help them?
I mean, there are various ways of doing that. I mean, this is a great example of what you're doing, right? We're building a meaningful relationship. We met randomly through, as I said, Shahjahan and Samir, and that could have been a one-off conversation. And we live in different parts of the world. We could have never met again, but we kept in touch. When I visited Islamabad, I reach out to you. When I go to Karachi, I reach out to Shahjahan, or I see Samir is on this call as well.
Absolutely.
Samir has a vast network of people
Yeah.
in Canada. So if I ever need to reach out to anybody in the Pakistani community, I'll just reach out to Samir and say, hey. And since he knows me, he will broker the introduction forward.
Yeah.
In sales, where I've spent most of my career, a lot of people look down on sales as, to use a colloquial term in Pakistan, chuna laga dete hain.
Absolutely.
I personally feel that you should never sell something you don't believe in, and when you sell somebody a product or a service, they should actually deliver value.
Yeah.
And there have been multiple occasions where I've walked away from multi-100,000 or multi-million-dollar transactions where we thought it wasn't a good fit. And in a market like, I mean, Pakistan is a relatively small market when it comes to technology sales, but I mean, Toronto is a small market. And I built a reputation over the last 20 odd years where when I call an SVP of a bank or an insurance company or a retailer, they call back. And that's how you build meaningful relationships.
That's amazing. I think, and the kind of the journey that you made, going to Canada, Toronto, where no one knew you. Like in the early days, you had to do odd jobs, right? To reaching a point where all these like very influential people are have good relationships with you. I think that has a lot of learnings for people like us or people who are kind of starting out, especially in the North American market, right? Because I can agree that I've met a lot of Pakistanis who recently moved there or who are kind of graduating college, and one of the biggest challenges is to find an internship or find a job, right? I think this kind of process and this mindset of building relationships will really help them. So we talked about, yeah.
It's a lot better now than it was 20 odd years ago. There are a lot of large organizations that do a lot of great work in this area. And I keep seeing my friend Samir on the screen, so I keep referring to his organization. I mean, they do a lot of
Absolutely.
great things, building bridges and introducing people and expanding the network of folks who move from Pakistan because he represents the BBC. But again, network. That's the one thing I would say: build meaningful relationships.
Yeah, totally agreed. So we talked about your journey from your first job in Canada at Oracle to now at Salesforce. So for people who don't know much about Salesforce or what Salesforce actually does, what is your role at Salesforce? Like, what does it entail?
Mm-hmm. So Salesforce, again, I joined because of the two things I keep talking about: luck and network. So I was with a company called BA Systems, which was getting acquired by Oracle, and at that time I didn't want to go back to Oracle. And Salesforce reached out to me, and I had no clue what Salesforce was. Remember, 12 years, right now it's a huge giant of a company, and everybody or most people know what Salesforce is. 12 years ago, nobody knew Salesforce, including me. So when I got a call from them, I talked to a colleague of mine. I said, Mitch, this company's reached out to me. I don't know what to do. And so we did a little bit of research, and we established that they have an interesting value proposition. And I just went for a conversation with them, told them that I have no interest in moving. I'm doing really well. But they turned around and they came after me very aggressively because they were building out the enterprise sales organization at that time. 12 years ago, Salesforce only sold to small and medium companies and sold to the phone pretty much. So we joined them, and I remember that at that point they gave me stock options and the stock price was worth $35. And I remember talking to my friend and said, who's going to buy the stock at $35? Fast forward, that stock went to 140, split 4-1, and is back at 140, and it went as high as 200 actually. So I joined Salesforce. I was responsible for building relations with banks because that was my work experience previously. Banks refused to buy anything to do with cloud because at that time, again, 12 years ago, everybody wanted their server right next to them where they could hug it if they wanted to. And nobody wanted to put any data into the cloud. And it was, again, a lot of building relationships and giving them the information they needed. And fortunately, with a lot of networking and a lot of luck, did very well over the last 12 years with Salesforce. And ran the team that did financial services, ran the team that ran digital transformations. And right now I'm responsible for a team that tries to deliver Salesforce solutions to governments and public sector organizations. I had to delay this call with you because we got pulled into a call with the Premier's office, and we are helping design a solution for COVID-19 tracking. And Salesforce had made that technology available free for a lot of healthcare organizations and governments for the foreseeable future. And we're implementing a lot of these solutions as this crisis unfolds.
Oh, that's fantastic. And no worries at all. We just pushed it 1 hour for you. That's absolutely fine. So
Thank you. Appreciate it.
what kind of excites you nowadays? Like nowadays in general, and also nowadays in the Corona period.
Well, I always have been a proponent of saying this, and the folks, teams I've worked with have heard me say this many, many times. Whenever there is a crisis, there's always a bigger opportunity. So we can either spend our time and focus on the crisis and focus about how our life is miserable because we've been sitting here at home for 5 weeks, or how we can't go say our tarawihs in the mosques, or whatever you want to crib about. But in every crisis, there's a bigger opportunity. And for those of us in the technology world, and I suspect a lot of the folks or your audience would be, this is the time to either reskill and retool ourselves, or if you are into building and developing, build and design solutions for remote working, for this pandemic is not the first and the last. I mean, from what I understand and read, there's going to be a lot more of this. So this is going to become the norm. So if you are in the tech world and you're designing solutions, focus on solutions which have to do with opportunity to work remotely. Somebody wants to add comments, which I don't understand.
Someone has turned on their mic by mistake. That's fine.
That's okay.
That's amazing. That's amazing insights. And what excited you before Corona? Or if Corona is not something that came around, what were you kind of thinking about, planning to do? Or
well, what excites me the most are my 3 boys. I'm a late bloomer. I have 3 boys who are 10, 9, and almost 4. I spend a lot of time with them. Folks who've known me for a while know that I try and work from home as much as possible pre-COVID. And so this is not new for me. I enjoy spending time with them and raising my kids. And post-Corona, which would also not too far in the future, it will be post Salesforce. I plan to take a few years off and focus more on the nonprofit work that I'm doing with Rainbow Cloud Initiative.
oh, that's amazing.
It's twofold. A, that gives me a lot of personal satisfaction. B, while the kids are young and they want to spend time with me, I want to take advantage of that time and spend more time with them.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think then this situation is more of an opportunity for you to kind of spend more.
Definitely.
But I totally agree that a lot of companies are sharing their experiences that a lot of rules, obviously not all of the rules can work perfectly fine in a remote scenario, especially of like software companies and not hardware companies. I'm sure you'd be seeing a similar trend with your customers as well.
Absolutely. I'll give you a quick example. So this nonprofit that we run, Rainbow Cloud Initiative, the trainings we run are generally in person.
Okay.
So we hire an instructor who stands in there and trains a class of 25, 50, 30 people. So 4 weeks ago, we had to cancel our class. And now we had 22 new immigrants who had come and they were looking forward to do this course because obviously no companies are hiring these days.
Yeah.
So we decided to do a remote session on a technology like Zoom. And we had no idea how that worked. And a couple of colleagues of mine, we sat and moderated the chat. We muted everybody, let the instructor teach, and then opened up for questions. It actually went extremely well. We just finished it last week, and now we're making arrangements for those 22 people to take their certifications remotely. And Salesforce and the Trailhead team of Salesforce is really partnering well. And hopefully in the next 2 weeks, those folks will get their certification. And when the market starts opening up a little bit, they'll be in the job market with an absolutely new technology. So
No, that's amazing contribution, I think. And you talked about the Trailheads program. If I'm not wrong, that's the community building initiative of Salesforce, right?
now Trailhead is almost like a learning management system that Salesforce has designed. And we've put a lot of our training material on Trailhead, and it's open for everybody to use. There's no cost to it. You can actually play around with the actual technology, learn, connect with other folks who are taking that journey, write your certifications, and basically retool yourself. It used to be only Salesforce. We recently announced a partnership with AWS, where a lot of the AWS courses will also be on Trailhead. And you can just go there, create a profile, and start going through these badges and certifications and trails and retool yourself.
Wow, no, that's an amazing resource to share, especially in this time where you shared, a lot of people, especially developers and techies, can kind of retool themselves. And
I will, when we end, I'll send you a link to Trailhead. Feel free to share with anybody or your network, and they can all go and access them.
absolutely, we'll share it in the post event email as well. So we talked about what excites you, right? And you told me about what your plans are after Salesforce, but these are kind of the same plans that you plan to do, things that you plan to do in the next 10 years, right?
A lot shorter than 10 years, actually.
Okay.
About 9 years ago, with the folks who know me in Canada, I made an announcement and said at 48, I will fiscally retire, and which meant that I might still work, but I won't be looking for the next house, the next car, the next pool, the next whatever. And I was a year late. Actually, I said I'll do it at 46. I did it at 47. So I was a year late. I'm 49 now. So no, the post Salesforce plan and focusing on nonprofit is not a 10-year plan. It's a plan in the foreseeable future. I would say next 2-3 years. And I most people push off retirement and travel to when they're 65 or 70. My wife and I feel, A, who knows if we'll be alive by 65, 70. B, will we have 100% function of our bodies, घुटने जवाब दे दिए हो, you cannot go anywhere, do something. So no, we plan on traveling with our children, and now, not 10 years from now.
That's fantastic, and we'd love to meet your family as well and host them when you travel with them to Pakistan. But
Absolutely.
what are your plans for like the next 10 years? I know that you're someone who has obviously planned it out from, you said something 8 years ago and now you're fulfilling it. So what next?
Uh, to be honest, I'm 50, almost 50. So I'm not really planning anything major in the next 10 years. What I do know is I will transition out of the business of making money and do things that are gives me more satisfaction as an individual. So I could still continue to work with a company like Salesforce, but that would not be, the money won't be driving it. I might do a different role. I might go into the philanthropic part of Salesforce, for example, or or maybe go full time with my nonprofit and work with new immigrants and refugees.
Right.
So the objective for the next 10 years of my productive work life is not going to be to maximize on income and wealth.
But
It'll be to do things
do
that
something that
drive me.
makes an impact, right?
Pardon me, you cut out a
Yeah,
little bit.
so it will be doing something that makes an impact, that leaves a.
That's right. Like the conversation we had when I was in Islamabad.
Yeah,
We came in. I tried to talk to various folks in power and say, hey, let's start doing various technology trainings in Pakistan. And if Pakistan were to take me up on that, maybe I'll travel to Pakistan 4 or 5 times a year and help with that.
yeah, I'm sure soon someone will kind of take the lead on that
I
as.
hope. I hope so. I hope so
Uh,
too.
but we're really, I think, blessed to have people like you who have done well, like extremely well for themselves, but also want to give back, not just to everyone, obviously to everyone, but also specifically to the country, right? So, like this question is a little bit general. So, how can we, and we talked about this obviously at Startup Grind as well, right? So, just to recap, how can we uh, collaborate with people like you, with people in the diaspora who have done well to uplift Pakistan?
I just, as I said to you last time when we met in Islamabad, I think I'm not an exception. I think there are hundreds and hundreds of people like myself who've done well in the West, who are initially from Pakistan, who would love to do something for Pakistan, because after all, we are the product of that society. As I mentioned to you, I did all my education in Pakistan. So if I'm very successful, it's because of a lot of support I got from various organizations and various governments or various networks in Pakistan. I personally feel that, other people may not. I feel it's almost my moral obligation to do something back for Pakistan. Having said that, I don't live there, and I don't have as vast a network there as maybe you would have or Shah Jahan would have. So the idea is to partner with organizations and folks like yourself and other folks in Pakistan. And if there's anything I can do, I'll be more than happy to. And as I say, I had many conversations. You remember Saad from Seattle? When
Absolutely.
we talked about that too, Saad would be happy to jump in and do whatever is required. But unfortunately, we don't have the network and the access in Pakistan anymore. If you guys make it happen, I'm sure there will be hundreds of folks like myself who will be willing to invest their time, effort, and resources to deliver something for Pakistan.
Absolutely. I think, and obviously for the people don't know what we do specifically, and with Startup Grind, we tried bringing a lot of people like yourself back to Pakistan, not permanently, but together at least, so we can kind of brainstorm and work together. And there's obviously a kind of reluctant nature, I would say, from a lot of people in the government who probably don't understand the impact of technology. But now with people like Shabahat and a lot of like Tanya and all these other people, they are doing a lot of things, and I think it's only a matter of time that uh, the Pakistani government as well makes a significant push into integrating the diaspora and working with them and people like you to run these massive programs. I think the Ministry of IT just announced about a tender for a training program that is very similar to this. The Ministry of IT is also running a program with the Punjab IT board for the national
You're
training.
you're extremely more optimistic than I am, and I love it. You should be. As we get as old farts, we become more skeptic. Uh, you mentioned you're a lot younger, so I love it that you're optimistic. I hope, really, really hope you're right. My experience in the last year and a half has been different, but if you
Uh,
anything
I
folks
think
like me can do, or myself, just I'm a WhatsApp away. So you message us and I'll bring together folks in North
I
America who will jump in.
Absolutely. I think just to add into what I just said, and obviously I observed the same, that there is, there a lot of things can happen which are not happening probably because of the system that is already in place, right? And changing that would take a lot of time. But at the same time, a lot of private initiatives can be taken, right? So we did Startup Grind probably all privately. There was very few like very little tiny government funding from one department, but then a lot of other initiatives are also led by private individuals, right? And I think that is really a great opportunity for not just like someone like me and Shahjahan who are already into the ecosystem, but also for all these big tech companies who are in Pakistan with massive presence who want to do something to take the lead on an initiative like this and partner with people like you. So I think sooner or later, even if the government doesn't take a lead, maybe people and organizations can come together and start working on this common goal.
I agree. And listen, you have a huge network. So does Shah Jahan Chaudhary. So does Samir Dosal. I think you guys should put your heads together, come up with a plan,
Yeah,
and I can help you bring either Salesforce, Amazon, Google, various trainings available, and let's do something in Pakistan. I would love
absolutely.
that.
And I think now, especially like Pakistan has become very visible in terms of technology, right? So AWS has sponsored a very big conference here. They're making a big push. In fact, they're the sponsor for Startup Grind for this month as well. But then a lot of other companies have opened offers that they can notice. But definitely, will come together and do something about this. At least start the
and
conversation.
as you think about this, don't think of trainings for the sake of trainings. Think trainings that help people land jobs.
Sure, absolutely.
Every time I speak to government officials in Pakistan, and when I was in Islamabad, I did a TV interview on this as well. I think Pakistan's biggest advantage is we have such a young population and quite computer literate. And I think gone are the days of these 5-year degrees and 3-year degrees and 2-year degrees. We should focus on almost like nano diplomas or nano courses.
Yeah,
Somebody's a Java developer, teach them something on AWS or Azure or Salesforce or Google, and find them jobs. I mean, in the West, they're struggling. They're struggling to find jobs, find roles. They have jobs open. They can't find people with these technologies. I think Pakistan's full of really sharp, smart people. Let's train them with the thought process of how do we land them jobs.
absolutely. I think I totally agree on this because, I don't know if we talked about this, but there are a lot of my friends who are working remotely from Pakistan and doing really, really well for themselves because, doing average in North America versus living in Pakistan and getting the same salary is like doing really well, right? But at the same time, people with, I would say, the same or the same potential or the same educational background, right? Are not really doing well, right? They're working locally in local organizations. And I think to upskill
And
them in order to
even
get
if
them
they
higher.
don't do, sorry to interrupt you. Even if they don't, so for example, if a Salesforce developer, for example, if it makes $100,000 in Canada,
Yeah.
if that individual with the same credentials make 50,000 or even $30,000 in
Even
Pakistan, that person would
30,000.
be thriving.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so I think Pakistan has a huge advantage, and organizations like yours and Shah Jahan's and the government and Samir should put your heads together and put a plan together.
No,
I'll
no.
fly in to
But
offer my 2 cents.
I think before next startup grind, we should, well, I'll start involving everyone and we should at least start something, right? Because I don't think it's that difficult. It's just about kind of starting it and building some case studies for bigger
Yeah.
organizations to kind of take notice, right? And with organizations like Salesforce and a lot of others have all this like philanthropic goals, and I think it really fits in with that as well. Yeah.
I agree.
Perfect. So I think like I'm done with my questions, but before we open it up for Q&A, I have this like very short rapid fire question series, right? So they're mostly fun and to kind of make the
Sure.
conversation more diverse. So let's start with, okay. So team or single founder?
Team.
Okay. Business plan, yes or no?
Uh, in my personal experiences, I've always been light on a business plan, but if you're going to monetize it in the West, then you should have a business plan.
That's useful advice. Exit fast or grow?
That depends which life stage you are. I've never heard of a fast exit, by the way. But what I would say is, if you have to fail, fail fast. Don't take a lot of years to fail.
No, that's really useful. I think it has more to do with like when you're starting a venture, do you start with the mentality of selling it or growing it?
I think you should start with the mentality of making it successful and making sure that the team that you start with gets value out of it, whether it's value in terms of monetary terms or value in terms of satisfaction.
That makes sense. Perfect advice. So vanilla or chocolate?
I'm always chocolate.
Perfect. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
So this one is, I think, more about business. So go to market globally or locally?
I think you should think local, you should move fast, and then bet on yourself to be successful. And if you're wildly successful, go global.
Amazing. I think definitely with with this like global world that is even more evident right now with Corona, everyone is connected and online. I think the opportunities are very visible for someone from Pakistan and Bangladesh and like anywhere around the world to start something for the global market.
Especially in technology and in cloud technology, there are no boundaries. You can totally, if you build a cloud computing solution, you can totally go global.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of like amazing people who've done well, especially in the SaaS space in Pakistan, which will introduce you to next time you come to Pakistan. We will keep finding amazing people to kind of build this community and grow together. So
Look forward to it.
looking for so Coke or Pepsi?
Coke or Pepsi? Coke, Diet Coke.
Okay. Uh, Favorite application, like mobile application?
Uh, the phone app on the phones. I use that the most.
The
I
coffee one.
sorry, not the phone app, the flashlight app. Sorry,
Oh, the flashlight.
my kids keep losing things, so I turn the flashlight off. I use that the most.
Okay, so your favorite
My favorite.
car?
I don't drive car. I've sold all my cars. I Uber everywhere I go.
Wow.
But the favorite car I've owned used to be an M5, a BMW M5.
Okay. Wow, that's amazing. That's a decent car. But like, why did you make this? How did you make this transition of not driving and Ubering everywhere?
I just found it to be a bad use of time, right? You're sitting 1 hour driving to the office, sitting 1 hour coming back. I now leave 1 hour late. I turn on my computer and Uber and I'm working, just
That,
like we're doing this conference.
I couldn't agree more with this. I think it's a stupid waste of human intelligence that you have to drive a vehicle. And I hope that very soon we arrive at this autonomous car age. I think there's and before we arrive, there's this really amazing company that Pakistani sold in Silicon Valley, which puts drivers sitting in Pakistan or third world countries to run cars like Ubers in the US, right? And they've just sold the company to someone, Usman Ghani,
Yeah.
name of the individual. So, okay, next question. Favorite movie or TV show?
Unfortunately, I don't watch TV or movies.
Wow.
I read a lot, as you can tell.
Yeah, so that's my next question then. So favorite book or the book that you're reading right now?
The book I'm reading right now is called Tools of Titans. It's you can't see it. It's way up there. It's a really big, thick book, 500-600 pages. It's a bunch of short stories by some great legends in the industry and outside the industry. They talk about what habit of theirs made them successful. It's a really good book. I'm enjoying it.
Fantastic. I'll add it to my reading list, although I'm like more of a movie person, but definitely.
There are
So
a couple of questions on chat. There's a gentleman called Malik Zain who said digital marketing or traditional door-to-door marketing. Well,
yeah, we
yeah,
can
I
take them.
prefer digital marketing. Broader reach. Malik.
Okay. Like if anyone has a question from the audience other than the rapid fire section as well, you can drop it in the chat and we'll start on it like in very short while. So I'll just wrap it up, the rapid fire question, with I think two more questions. So anything you collect?
I collect great memories.
Wow, that's amazing. I hope the memories from your Islamabad trip were good.
They were amazing. They were amazing.
Thank you so much.
Memories and relationships. That's what I collect.
Absolutely, and they were amusing for us as well because you came all the way and we had all this fun. I think that really made the whole experience.
Yeah,
Felt
especially the Natya Gali trip was also fantastic, even though it was snowing, but I loved it.
Next time we're hoping to, in October, if it happens, we're hoping to go to Skardu. But let's see how the situation turns out.
Got a
So
question in chat which says, any experience when you felt broke and how you got out of that? When you're saying broke, Tara, I'm assuming you mean when I had no money. And if that's the case, then yes, majority of my life, right up to almost when I was 20 years old, I had no money. And got out of it with a lot of luck, some great relationships. I've met, I would say, at least 15 people in my life who, at various points in my life, kind of changed my direction a little bit, gave me a little push in the right direction, and that has helped me achieve whatever I have in life. And I hope to be a similar person for many people in Canada.
I think you're being very humble by saying luck. I think luck comes to those who work hard. So it's a lot of hard work, then luck, then relationships and everything.
I
So
disagree, actually. So a lot of people work hard.
okay,
I know a lot of people who are extremely hardworking are not doing well. I believe in luck a lot. So I think you have to work hard. You can be extremely lucky, but if you don't work hard, it's not going to take you anywhere. But I do factor in luck, and I have a definition for luck. Luck is when hard work meets an opportunity,
absolutely,
and
absolutely.
the opportunity comes from your network. You know, I've never come across, the asman khulta hai and the opportunity comes down. It always comes through somebody in your network. So hard working is absolutely necessary, and if you have a strong network, then that's how you get lucky. Hard work and network.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think I've read somewhere that people who travel more are more lucky because they obviously meet more people, they see more opportunities.
It's the network. I have another question from
Yeah,
Tyra saying, how do you see women in future tech, economy, and sales? I can have another 1 hour conversation on this. It's not considered a good term, but I am a huge believer in equality, and I'm a huge feminist. And most people think feminist is a person who pushes for women's causes. That's actually not true. A feminist is a person who believes that a female should have the exact same rights as a male. If you are a father and you have a daughter and you feel your daughter should have the same rights as somebody else's son, that makes you a feminist. So I think there is a huge role for women in technology, in the economy, in sales. 50% of almost every country's population is women, and in most countries is underutilized. In most countries they're underpaid. In most countries they don't focus on opportunities, and what's worst is most hiring managers are men, so they hire more men. And I think that's a lost opportunity. And forget in company, if you're a household, if you make all the women in your house more productive, then your household income will double or increase. So I think it's one of the huge assets which globally and especially in Pakistan we don't utilize.
right.
And since you asked that question, Tara, I'll just say that the company I made reference I formed 20 years ago, we do some reverse sexism. We only hire women in that company
Wow,
as a tribute to my mother, who worked her tail off and made sure that all three of us were successful.
that's amazing. So Tahir is actually my mother, the one asking questions.
No wonder they are great questions. I have met her then. Please give her my salams.
Thank you. And I think just to add one more point, I think definitely with this, training initiative, one of the biggest opportunities or a big opportunity in Pakistan is obviously to train all these amazing women who are either, not doing work after getting married, whatever, due to culture or something. I think for them, getting training virtually and then working virtually would be a big opportunity, right?
I think so.
So we have
Zain Hassan asked a question, talk about any advice on building a network. Yes, be authentic. Don't suck up to people just because you want to get on the good side. If you're authentic, that comes through, and always try to deliver value for that individual you're building a network with. If you deliver value for him or her, then they'll be more open to building a network with you.
absolutely.
Unfortunately, we have to wrap up. I have another call in the next 3 minutes, and I would love to drop off and prepare for that.
No, perfect. I think we're done with the Q&A section as well. There's no more questions. So thank you so much for your time. It was wonderful chatting with you, and looking forward to reconnecting offline and continuing this conversation.
As always, the pleasure was mutual. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody. Khuda stay safe, and Ramzan Mubarak to those of you in Pakistan.
Absolutely. Ramzan Mubarak to you as well. Bye.
Bye now.
And